Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another future-focused live Q&A. I'm Christopher Lind. It's been a couple weeks, so good to be back and looking forward to going through this one. This one, again, is a little bit of a deviation from my usual one as I'm kicking off 2026. I'm not going to do the 3 headlines like I normally do. So what I'm going to do instead is I did this week, if you don't know, I have a podcast as well, and this one is going to go out as a podcast, given the nature of it. But I have a podcast as well, and this week I talked about what are 3 of the biggest things that everybody needs to be focused on as we wake up, what I'm calling, as we wake up from the AI hangover of 2025. And so coming into 2026, it's the year to kind of sober up a bit, or at least you should. And so what I wanted to do this Friday is dig into my predictions for 2026. Now, if you follow me for long, you know my predictions are not going to be hype driven. I'm not going to talk about how the apocalypse is coming in 2030 or anything like that, but really to try and get ahead of some of the things everybody needs to be thinking about as it relates to what's going on from a business, tech, and people standpoint. So I am live. So as always, I enjoy questions coming in. I will do my best to answer them as we go. But so let's get started with this one, because the first prediction that I've got this year, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this plays out. So I want to spend a little bit of time fleshing out what I mean with this prediction. But I actually think 2026 is going to be the first year we really start to see AI backlash. And when I say backlash, I mean that in multiple ways. So in some cases, if you've been following headlines or even just people's general attitude, the attitude towards AI is turning, and it's turning fairly severely. The kind of razzle-dazzle that it's had for the past couple of years is the mask is coming off, and people are not nearly as friendly towards it as they have been in the past. There's always been your skeptics. There's always been the people who are a little hesitant about it, but it's moving from hesitation and skepticism to straight up revolt in many cases. And that's a really important factor to keep in mind as you're thinking about what AI, the role AI plays, but it's not just people's attitudes. My comic with my written article this week was kind of playing on the fact that accountability is coming in, and I think we're going to start to see, and are already starting to see, some of the real legal accountability for some of this stuff. So last year especially was a year to kind of play it fast and loose, and now the courts are starting to catch up and go, well, wait a minute here, I'm not sure about this. I just saw it I think it was this morning. Italy is taking pretty seriously what Grok did when it came to its undressing behavior with minors. And so, they're like, hey, just so you know, you mess around with this, you will be criminally liable potentially for this, and not just for having that kind of content, but for the production of it. And so I think the dominoes are starting to fall a little bit, where people before thought, hey, it's AI, like what's really the harm? Or, who's really going to get in trouble here? And well, the courts are saying you are going to be the one who gets into trouble. And I've said from the time Gen A launched that it's an amplifier. And so, if there was accountability before, it's only going to intensify. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that as we get into 2026. But my point today is the backlash is real, both just, from people's attitudes about it to, the actual legal repercussions. Now, in terms of impact, because you go, okay, well, so backlash is coming, and it is, I think in some cases it's here. But I think that's really important for people as they think about, okay, well, so how do I avoid not getting whiplash or snapped in some of this backlash? Now, I think a big one is 2025, the word of the year was slop. I think 2026, the word of the year might be work slop specifically. But, that was the Merriam-Webster word of 2025 was slop. And so when you think about the backlash, that was already an indicator that people are getting a little fed up with this. Even Google is cracking down on, AI content on YouTube and all this stuff. So, you think about it as a creator. The whole AI boom, despite the fact that we were told AI would do the mundane stuff so we could focus on the creative stuff, a lot of the effort of AI was put on doing the creative stuff that typically people like doing. And so we saw a huge boom in that in the creator space, which we saw backlash in 2025. I think we're only going to see even more backlash in 2026. Now, I think the risk with this is it's not necessarily that you say, well, so are you anti-AI or pro-AI? It's you have to be a lot more thoughtful about it moving into 2026. And I think that's going to be a critical decision point for anybody as we come into this year to not end up stepping into the trap of AI backlash. Because the reality is, some of these tools, if you use Gemini, if you use Anthropic, if you use OpenAI less so, and I'll talk about that in one of my predictions later, but they are really helpful if you want, video content is now like the big thing. Gosh, if you've watched some of these YouTube videos that go viral now, it's just series after series after series of these short little AI generated clips slapped together. Or you've got an AI voiceover with an AI script that has AI video clips stitched together. And they're painful to watch and people are fed up with it. And so if you're a creator, there's all these videos out there of like how you can get a, popular YouTube channel or get your top 10 podcast by this and that. AI music was a big thing. And I think as a creator, you got to be really careful about how you use it, because what happens is, and you see this, the right before Christmas, I talked about the whole McDonald's AI ad that they actually had a whole production team involved in it. But when people figured out it was AI, I mean, the backlash was so intense, they had to pull the whole thing down. And so if you're using AI as part of your creative process, you better be really careful how. Or if you're embedding AI into your product as part of your, let's say you have a SaaS or some sort of tech product, you better be careful. If it's part of your services and you use AI to help with your service, you better be thoughtful and mindful, and there better be people involved in that, and not just like rubber stamping it, but like actually going, yeah, okay, maybe AI came up with this, but like I'm working and molding with all this. Because if you don't, the backlash, I firmly believe in 2026 is going to be fast and furious as people are fed up with just the garbage. Now, I think there's a flip side and a downside to that. And I think the flip side and downside to that is that when we get into this polarized nature of, okay, we're sick of AI, we're fed up with it, I'm sick of the slop, I'm sick of the AI generated voices, I'm sick of the crap that's getting pumped out there. The other day, just on a humorous note, like I think I saw 15 social media posts from different people. The post was similar enough that you're like, oh my gosh. And then the image that went with the post was the same freaking AI generated image. And you're just like, folks, can we use even an iota of creativity? Like, fine, somebody's post inspired you or, gave you something that made something come to mind. And so you did your own creative spin-off of it. But like, you stripped the very image and then took the original post, popped it into Gen AI, and then asked it to do a slight variation on it, and then you just copy and pasted it. Like, it's literally disgusting, some of the stuff that's out there. And I see it on YouTube, the slop channels where you're just like, really? Oh my gosh. Like, and so there's still some folks that are, just picking up this like, hey, wow, I don't even have to think or do anything. I can just let AI do the thinking for me. And you're like, dear heavenly, good grief. But here's the downside to this. And the part that I think is unfortunate is that AI can be used to really enhance people's creative abilities. And it can help people who formerly struggled with creative stuff to express themselves different. And a perfect example of this is I know someone very well who is brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant, but they struggle because of some of the cognitive challenges they have. They struggle being able to articulate what's in their head in words. They can't quite put the pieces together all on their own, but they know how to say, here's exactly what I'm trying to say. Here's what I mean. And they can easily revise it, once they see that, and they can work with it. And AI has been really helpful in getting them to express themselves. And I think that is wonderful. And the concern I have when we start to get into the AI backlash is people like put on their army fatigues and start like throwing grenades and taking shots at people when they think it's AI. And I see this on my comments chat, which, those of you who are here, by the way, I am live, so feel free to chime in. None of the folks who actually come on here, and I don't feed the trolls when I'm live, but every once in a while, like, I'll get the occasional comment where they're like, "You're AI." And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you, 5? No, I'm not, but okay, fine. But that's the kind of behavior you get. And I see it in academia where I'll see professors or educators be like, I just force people to hand write their assignments now so they can't fake it. And you're like, really? Like, this is our behavior, is we recoil and we go back to doing it the old-fashioned way, as though somehow the old-fashioned way was better. It's kind of like the folks who are like, remember the good old days when we didn't have seatbelts? And you're like, you mean the good old days when kids died because we put them in harnesses and strapped them in the back seat? Like, that's not the good old days, okay? And I think in some cases, that's the risk of AI backlash gone too far, is we suddenly have like witch hunts for people we suspect of using AI in a thoughtful and intelligible way. And you're like, okay, that's not helpful either. Yes, it's really frustrating and really annoying when you see people using AI poorly. And I personally, as somebody who specializes in this field, get really irritated with it, when I see it. And I'm like, come on, you really, like, put a little bit of time into it. And anybody who actually uses AI well, and I'm curious for those of you who watch this or comment in, but anybody who uses AI well knows AI doesn't really save you time, at least not the way that people who use it poorly think. In that AI actually, if you're using it well, like, you actually are spending more time. This person I know who uses AI to help them organize their thoughts, they spend a lot of time on it. Like, they're not doing one-shot prompts going, here's what I'm thinking, copy paste. They're like, no, that's not quite what I think. And they'll take a draft and then they'll work through it like 16 different times. And by the end of it, like, I'm looking at it because for me, it's faster for me to write just what's in my mind than it is to ask AI to help me with it. And it's just a personality difference. But I look at it and I'm like, yikes, like, that took me 10 times longer if I used AI to do it. But I think that's the difference between somebody who's using AI intelligently and is actually the driver, the overseer of AI, is they're working with it. They're actually they're correcting it when it's like, no, that's not correct, type of a thing. And I think this is, one of the shifts we're going to see. And I think it's a risk we just need to be aware of. And that's why I wanted to call it out as the first one, is because I think the backlash is inevitable. People are fed up, and they're fed up with more than just AI. They're pissed off about a lot of things right now. And you don't have to scroll the headlines long to see why people are rightfully pissed off right now. And so when people are just pissed off in general about a lot of things, I mean, let's just acknowledge our emotions end up making us pissed off sometimes about things we maybe don't need to be pissed off about, or maybe not quite so intensely. And so I think we run the risk of AI, us going too far and us going on a witch hunt. Gina Boss, I actually want to pull up this comment because I think it's a good one. It's like recording a video of yourself doing something, then watching the video. You spent double the time on the same thing. I actually love that example because let me give you a good example of one of the ways that AI is really helpful for me, right? And it's part of my development is that I take the transcripts from my live streams, from any keynote that I give. You know, when I'm asked to come speak at something, I always ask for the recording. And one of the things I do with that is I take the transcript and then I feed it into AI, not so I can generate me a 90-day content strategy and just have it vomit out a bunch of garbage that I copy and paste. No, to me, that would be not helpful AI usage. And then just have my gem, then I just have my gem post it for the next 90 days. To me, that would be poor use. But what I do with it is I put it into AI and I say, I'd like you to do an analysis of what I said. Like, break it down. Tell me where my opportunities were. What were some of the things that I did? What were some of the ways I phrased things? I have a global audience, so I ask it to tell me, like, are there areas where as a US citizen, some of my analogies or some of the things that I've said might not have landed with a global audience or may have come across the wrong way. And I actually ask it to give me that feedback that I then go through and look at and take seriously. And, it actually does inform the way I show up each time. Now, here's the big thing though. Just because AI tells me it doesn't mean I act on it. And I think that's another risk of AI is you can just take what it says. I mean, half the time I look at its feedback and I'm like, well, that was kind of the point of why I said that. So you saying like, oh, well, someone might be offended if you said, well, yeah, I kind of was trying to grab people's attention. Like that was hyperbole on purpose. So even though I use AI to help give me feedback, to take a transcript, because going back to your point, Gina Boss, I could sit and watch the whole thing and then write down every word that I said and then try and do all that. That wouldn't be the best use of my time. Getting an automated transcript of what I said is far faster. And then having something quickly scan it and summarize, hey, what are some of the key points or key things you caught in here? Hey, boss, see, I told you right there, there's the comments. Is this AI? No, it's not AI, but thank you for your commentary. And I'm not going to feed the trolls on it. But my point with it is the use of AI, it's really about how you use it and that you're using it carefully. And I just think you have to be really careful as we go into 2026 because people are already emotionally charged and frustrated, and then they're fed up with AI. And so the backlash is going to be intense. So there's that. And so I think there's that. I think the other thing that we have to be careful of when it comes to the backlash piece is that there's three pieces. And so I'll just address this one straight because the blue eyes thing, my desk faces the window. And so I have very bright outside light that hits my lights. I also have very blue eyes. So when the sun comes in, hits my eyes, they're very blue. So you could say they don't look real or whatever. I get it a lot, even in real life. So there you go. I'm not going to address it every stream, but I get enough comments about my eyes that I will actually go on record addressing why my eyes are so blue. It's both true and a nature of where my desk is positioned. All right. Tangent ended on that one. Okay, back to the negative impact, the backlash that I think is really important here is that the mental health impact on this is really serious. And we're already seeing, I said earlier, that the legal accountability of AI is going to be very serious in 2026. But the mental health and legal associated with that is already starting to hit. The teenagers that are taking their lives after working, talking to a chatbot, the undressing apps of underage minors type of a thing. All this, like, it's real, and the impact is the cyberbullying that's happening with this, and it's going to be intense. And here's the thing: well, I think, yes, the backlash in some ways is going to be more intense as more people use it. The accountability is going to be way more intense on people who do it. And so, as a warning to anybody who thinks like, isn't it so fun to troll people, or like, hey, I use AI to be my, therapist, to like talk through my deepest, darkest things, like, be careful, be really careful, because AI keeps receipts. And that's one of the things a lot of people do not remember, is that every conversation you have with a chatbot, it doesn't matter if you do it in incognito mode, just for the record. Okay. It doesn't matter. You can be on your NordVPN. You can, be in an incognito browser tab, in an incognito AI conversation, and that record is still tied to you. And it's keeping receipts, and they literally, legally, okay, the AI companies legally have to maintain all of that. Now, we can sit and debate for how long and what a breach of data privacy that is, and I agree. And we've seen things about, these things getting leaked to the public because somebody accidentally checked, share publicly, whatever. So you see all that, but what people don't realize is those receipts are there, like, in some cases permanently. And so when you're doing this kind of crap with AI, not only, one, is it not good for your mental health, like, we already see this. There is rising evidence of cognitive decay in people who overuse AI. So it's making you dumber, literally making you dumber. It's causing serious mental health things, exacerbating existing mental health things, and actually triggering new ones in people. Like, AI psychosis it's a real thing. Like, we're going to see this probably as an official diagnosis. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not diagnosing it, but I'm like, AI psychosis is a real thing that's coming out now. And the thing with it is, anybody who's on the flip side of that, who's contributing to it, participating in it, if you're cyberbullying somebody with AI content, like all this other stuff, the receipts are there. They can pull up the chat logs. They can, subpoena this stuff. And then when you go, it wasn't me, it's like, well, actually it was. And here we have the entire chat log of you having all this. Like, watch a crime show and watch how many people get nailed for their Google search history. By the way, I'm not anti-AI. I'm actually very pro wise usage of AI. I'm not anti-AI at all. If you follow my stuff for long, you'll know that. But the whole thing with it is AI is keeping receipts of all this stuff. And so if you're doing stuff you're not, like, when accountability comes, because it will, you're going to get pinned to the wall for it. And there's not going to be a, well, oops, I didn't know, it wasn't me. I thought, like, it's legit going to be, nope, we've got you right here. We see the record of the transcripts. We can see the entire conversation, and you can't even point the finger and say AI did it, because you literally asked AI to do it. And we know, because you asked it 37 times over the course of an hour. And so this is where the backlash piece, as we step into 2026, the thing with AI is it's an accelerant. It's like pouring jet fuel on a bonfire. Whatever that fire was going to burn is going to burn that much hotter and that much farther, things like that. And, it's going to, there's somebody else. There's actually a singer. I just saw this one over the holiday break where AI, and this isn't the first time it happened, but AI, and I hate the term hallucinate, because it doesn't hallucinate. It takes information that it has, and it's a predictive algorithm. So it just cobbles it together. And I can't remember the name of the music artist, but they got canceled because of some fabricated information that was made up by AI as it cobbled together a history of this person. And then because we've got all these like automated AI generators, the second an AI generated story takes off online on social media, more AI generators like and share it, and then suck that into their AI and then make a new article referencing the fake news article, and it blows up. And so the backlash is going to be real this week. I mean, we got to be really careful with this stuff. And if ever a time to be slow to anger, quick to listen, and slow to like respond, now is that time, because it's real. In 2026, we're gonna feel it full on. Okay, that was one prediction. So let's see. Here's the flip side of this. I only have 5. But number 2 is, at the same time, while this AI backlash, I think, is going to heat up in 2026, I also think we're going to see it further integrate into our life. Now, that may sound like an almost contradiction of one another. You're like, wait, I thought there was backlash. You're also saying it's going to further integrate? And my answer to that is yes. And I think, again, this is a double-edged sword, because I think in a large sense, what's going to happen is AI is going to become more invisible. And that's good and bad, in that invisible AI, and it's a term I use pretty frequently, invisible AI can be exceptionally dangerous because you don't always know it's there. And so it starts to do the things it does. It can embed itself into your life. It can, be like, I had somebody at the end of last year where I'm like, you need to delete that AI tool, because that AI tool is literally monitoring everything you're doing on your computer, not just when you're in a conversation. It's literally sucking, it's a data vacuum, sucking everything you're doing on your computer in and feeding it back. And it's literally right in the terms and service. You signed up for it. You're paying them to steal your information, type of a thing. And so, but this is where invisible AI gets dangerous, is, what's his name? Altman, him and Johnny Ive now, the big thing, they're pushing the AI pen. And if you didn't notice, Sam Altman's like, everybody needs to take notes on paper. And you're like, hang on, what's going on here? And then come to find out, oh, take notes on paper. Buy your AI pen that is tracking everything you're writing and feeding it back into the beast. Like, bro, come on. Like, you're not even good at hiding this anymore. But I think this is where the invisible AI starts to come in, is we start using it for things and not paying attention to it, and it becomes invisible. We forget AI is involved, or companies, because of the backlash, get more subtle about the way they inject it into things. And even here's a perfectly good example of invisible AI and the negative effect it can have if you're not really paying attention. Shopping right now. If you think you're paying the same price as somebody else, you're not. For pretty much anything you buy online anymore. Not everything, but largely now, all these big consumer companies have embedded AI into their e-commerce platforms. And so it knows what you're doing, and it's changing the price in real time based on what it thinks you're going to pay. So and AI is extremely good at pattern recognition. So it can see, like, okay, well, how confident is this person in their purchase decision? What other sites have they looked at before they came to this? Because it has all your cookies data. How many times have they looked this thing up? Is this an impulse buy? Is this it knows your shopping personality. And so based on that, it will literally then say, and here's your price. And then you ask your friend who's sitting on the couch next to you, hey, how much is it for you to buy this? And you look over at it and you're like, wait, why is yours 20% less? And it's like, well, because AI just adjusted the price in real time based on what you're doing. And going back to the backlash point that I brought up before, like, as people start to figure this out, I'll tell you right now, if you're a consumer product or any sort of product company and you're pulling this nonsense, like, I would stop very quickly, because as more and more people figure out that companies are exploiting them and their personalized shopping experience is actually trying to suck as much money out of you as they can possibly get based on how vulnerable you are when you're making a purchase decision, people are going to go bananas when they actually finally start clicking this together. And so, but this is where invisible AI starts to come into play, is we don't even realize it's happening anymore. And we convince ourselves we're not using AI. I'll answer your question here in a second. We don't realize it, or because we've kind of propped ourselves up with it in certain areas, we start to deny it ourselves. We're like, no, right? It's like an addict. I could stop anytime if I wanted to, but I don't want to. That's why I let AI make my decisions for me. And this is where invisible AI is going to come in. Now, on some positive things, I'm even seeing this in some of the consulting work that I'm doing as it comes to kind of, I don't like the word blue collar, because blue collar implies there's like the classes of it. And I think actually a lot of these blue collar jobs are actually going to be more sustainable long term. But this is where AI is now starting to embed itself in positive ways. I just did some work with somebody at the end of 2025 where they have a small business, and we set up some AI tools to kind of help automate people assigning, like setting up dates for them to come on site to do some of the work so that they don't have to do it manually. They were doing it all manually before. And so there are certain things that even in industries before that said, we'll never use AI, because they were looking at it through the lens of AI is taking over the industry. It's spreading into other industries where they're like, well, it's not taking it over, but it is useful in these ways. And so I think as we go into 2026, we're going to continue to see it go from these things where, you know, the narrative was like, let's take a very popular one in 2025. 2025, it was nobody's going to code again, ever. Nobody's going to write code. Well, even the software AI companies are hiring human software developers because AI code is a joke. Okay. So when you had that going in 2022, 23, 23, 24, 25, you had some of these industries going, AI will never touch what we do. And I'm starting to see in 2026, some of those industries go, well, you know, actually the work we do is actually more diverse and complex than we originally thought. And actually, you're right. AI actually is kind of helpful over here, you know, when it comes to some of these things. We were doing a lot of these really manual things that didn't need to be manual, type of a thing. So let me pull up this question, because I think it's a good one. Do I think we'll see a rise of more sovereign models, based AI models, breaking from the larger consumer models? So here's the real challenge with this, where I'll say yes and no. And I actually think this is potentially a dangerous thing that people need to be aware of as they go into it, is that there's base models, and then there's like the consumer, and this is where the Shoggoth analogy comes into play. Like there's the AI base model, and then there's like the mask that you see on the front end, and that's what you think you're working with. And really the Shoggoth is behind the scenes, like it's a monster waiting to eat you alive type of a thing. And so while I don't respond to the troll comments, they do make me chuckle, by the way. So my point with this, now I totally lost my train of thought with this. Oh, to your question about the sovereign AI models. I think sovereign AI models, you're going to have a hard time finding truly sovereign AI models. And what I mean by that is most people do not understand what actually goes into building a raw AI model from the ground up. It's a lot of work, and it costs a lot of money to do it. And so even a lot of these platforms and products and AI tools out there where they say, we'll build you your own proprietary AI model, it's not really. It's still built off of a base model. And in many cases, not all the time, but in many cases, it's actually APIing its way back into these big models. And so this is one of the biggest misleading things. And this is where in a lot of the consulting work I do, one of the biggest things I talk to companies about is I'm like, these AI vendors, you're working with, you need to demand to know who their base model is if they have one. Like you need to know, like, who are you working with your technology? Like you got OpenAI on the back end? Do you got Gemini? Do you got Anthropic? Do you got DeepSeek? Like, where is my data going? Because even if they say, oh, well, we have a secure API and the data is encrypted and yada, 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 and they feed you the whole tech line to just make your head spin and forget what they're saying, it's still going over there most of the time. And so I think some of these AI models, these sovereign ones that go, hey, we're the independent version of it, it's not quite what it seems. And so I think actually one of the risks of invisible AI is there's going to be lots of snake oil salesmen. Okay, we're going to have the AI snake oil salesman. We already do, but we're going to have even more of them everywhere as they, sell their wares, which is nothing more. I was watching the thing on the history of Coca-Cola last night with my kids. And, back in the day when it was like, oh, I've put these ingredients together and it's a magic elixir. And you're like, it is? Like, wow, I feel so much better when I drink it. This Coca-Cola makes me, have more energy. And it's like, yeah, that's because it's laced with cocaine. Like, duh, you feel better type of a thing. And that's what we're seeing as AI starts to go, is it's like, look at our proprietary AI model that's fully encrypted and built on its own proprietary training data. And you're like, right, that APIs back into OpenAI and is feeding all your data over there. And there's zero transparency into where that data is stored and what's being done with it type of a thing. And so I think that's where you got to be really careful. Yeah, they haven't quite figured out how to put cocaine in AI, but the addictive properties psychologically actually are almost as addictive as crack, heroin, cocaine. So watch it. But so my point with it is you just have to be really careful. And another good example of this that a lot of times people don't realize, like, is you got to be really careful of VPN providers. All right. This has nothing to do with AI, but just another warning, a tech warning. This is why I like doing what I do, because there's a lot of times where I'm just like, it's just awareness. You still got to make the decision yourself, but you just got to be knowing the deck you're playing with. Where a lot of times people are like, VPNs make me safe. Nobody knows what I'm doing on the internet. And you're like, well, actually you're funneling all of your internet traffic through a single like VPN provider. And if you're not careful and you don't read the terms of service, they may encrypt the data after it goes out, but they're keeping a record of everything you did. So literally what you're doing is you're handing over the VPN company all of your internet data, and now they can go sell it how they want type of a thing. And again, I'm not saying every VPN provider is doing that, but this is another one of those like American political tricks, where you're like, hey, look what I've got for you. And you're like, wow, that's so great. And you're like, well, don't read the fine print. It's like Rumpelstiltskin. Yeah, right. Fleecing of America at 6, like that is what we need to be prepared of in 2026. And so when I say further integration into everyday life and invisible AI is a thing, this is one of those areas you got to be really careful of. Because, and again, it doesn't mean you say, so I'm going to go off the grid and live in the salt flats of Salt Lake and disappear again. Like, well, I mean, you could, I guess, but it's just being informed. It's about knowing what's really going on so that you can make wise decisions. And so that's prediction number 2. Is prediction 1, we're going to see a ton of backlash as people realize, like, wait, you're paying half the price for this because Amazon knows that I like this thing or I buy it all the time. But then at the same time, it's going to be further integrated as more people start using it. I'm not convinced Zuckerberg's right that we're all going to walk around with Meta glasses, especially when the people who are wearing them right now are having them like ripped off their face and snapped because people are really rightfully angry at data privacy. But it is going to further integrate, whether it's the Meta glasses or the John Ivy pen. Either way, it's going to make its way in. Now, my third prediction on this one has to do with the way it's shifting at work. And I think this is tied to the previous one, the actual previous 2, but it's a slight subtlety in it. And it has to do with what I'm already seeing in some of the AI consulting I'm doing right now, which is it's going to be a refining and open exploration year in 2026. And what I mean by that is I am still convinced that the word of the year, at least in the corporate sphere, is going to be work slop for 2026. While people are starting to realize, like, hey, this PowerPoint deck presentation, like, did any person actually proofread this? Or has this just gone through 7 iterations of Gemini before it made it to the board, type of a thing? And so people are starting to recognize that, or when they get the company email and they're like, I don't think a human wrote or edited this, there's starting to be the backlash of it. And so companies are starting to refine that. Add to that, loads of companies spent billions of dollars last year doing AI pilots. And I know because I was involved with a lot of them. And let's just say the ones where they didn't put in the work to do it right did not go so well. And the promise that AI can do the work of a human is factually incorrect, even on the most basic tasks. I mean, both Taco Bell and McDonald's abandoned their AI drive-through ordering initiatives. So we couldn't even get AI to effectively take drive-through orders. And really the big I wasn't involved with those projects specifically, but I gave feedback to some folks who were involved in it. And a large part of it was, I was like, you should have had a bunch of high schoolers consult on the project and told you how people are going to troll you should have grabbed a couple social media influencers and gone, hey, how are you guys going to make this go viral? And then you could have planned for that type of a thing. And so what you're seeing is companies are starting to realize that, one, people are busy, but they're not productive. And so they're starting to refine, like, all right, we got to dial this back. Workers are getting fed up and burned out. And so they're starting to go, I spent 4 hours writing an email. It used to take me 15 minutes. And this gem that's supposed to be helping me with this is actually making it take exponentially long. So you're starting to see this refinement. Like I said, especially I would say, in the corporate sphere. Now, in the manufacturing sphere, some of these others, you're starting to see more exploration with it. But again, there were promises by 2026 the Tesla bot was going to be doing all of auto manufacturing. And it's like, yes, we've made huge strides in robotics, and the Boston Scientific robot is a little bit terrifying. I am not wearing contacts, by the way. But so it's a little bit terrifying what some of these robots are doing. And yet they're cosmically stupid. I've got friends who are in robotics and AI, and they're like, we can't even get these things to actually perform some of the most basic tasks. Like, one of my favorite things is when, like, the late night hosts show clips of AI doing laundry or shopping, and you're like, that's like what my 90-year-old grandpa does when he's trying to take a thing of Fig Newtons off the shelf. And we're like heralding it as the breakthrough of what, like, it can wash a towel. I mean, I still got to bring the towel, and I still got to put the stuff in the wash. And then, like, so technically all it did was take it out of my hand and put it in. But look, and so yeah, I don't have contacts. See, there you go. But so, I mean, I think this is the whole thing with it, is that we're going to see this dramatic shift. But also, as I said before, you're seeing in blue collar work, like, people are finding different ways that they can use AI, where, it was like, man, I used to have to sit and actually jot all this stuff down. It is nice to actually now be able to maybe have an AI assistant that I can just talk to. And then that way, after I get done with the job, I don't have to sit and, like, write my notes down and then be like, shoot, I put it in the truck somewhere. Like, where was that thing? It's like, oh, I just like told it what I needed to remember, type of thing. And it's intelligent AI use. And I think this is where the workforce is probably refining a little bit faster than consumers. In some cases not. But that's what I think we're going to see in the world of work, is we're going to see a pretty dramatic shift. Now, to be clear, I'm involved in enough of this stuff to go, there's still going to be a lot of really stupid stuff. I'm just finishing up my article for next week. Now, touching my eyeball actually made my eye hurt. There's a new CEO out who just got rid of his sales organization for like 3 AI chatbots. And I'm writing about it, and I did my podcast on it for next week, because it's just one of those, like, head slap moments where you're like, did you not think this? Like, I can basically set my watch for how long it's going to be before we reverse this thing. So what I don't want to say is that, hey, everybody, don't worry. There's not going to be dumb decisions that are made in 2026. There's still lots of them being made today. The AI industry, more than ever, because some of this stuff is starting to pop up, they're freaking out. And so they're more desperate than they've ever been. And so when people get desperate, or when companies get desperate, they tend to make really stupid decisions, which is why you're seeing Nvidia, and as people are like, hey, wait, y'all are just changing money around, like you're not actually profitable. People are starting to recognize this stuff, and so they're starting to like panic. So we're still going to see lots of stupid stuff in 2026. 100%, we're still going to see it. I'm sure I'm going to have plenty of content to talk about all year this year, but I think we are going to start to see a bit of a shift as things move around. So that's number 3. For the sake of time, I'll jump to these next. Well, no, what was that one? Oh yeah, no, okay. So number 4, I've been waiting for this move, and it finally kicked in Q3 of 2025. I think we're going to start to see, at least from the West, Google become I'm not Bill Burr, by the way. I do get that a lot. I didn't know who that was until somebody said it once on a stream, and I had to go look it up. Anyway, so Google, I think, is actually going to become probably the dominant player. I think Anthropic is going to do some things, but we're literally watching in real time the fall of OpenAI, which even I was an early adopter of OpenAI. I thought these guys are going to be, leading the pack for a long time, and they've fallen pretty far from grace. And even I completely shifted over to Google, which I really didn't plan on doing, because for a long time, Gemini, to me, I was like, it's fine. It's not great. It's not really worth the shift. It can't do a lot of the stuff I needed to do. It was not, by my definition, a high performing AI model. And then Gemini 3.0 came out, and it was like, the second it came out, I went, whoa, watch out, because now the combination of the power of their AI, the integration Google has with an ecosystem, and then the fact they're a profitable company already, like they can afford to keep investing in this. Sam Altman and OpenAI, like they're just, and yes, that is true that Google, they have data, loads of it, because we've been using Google products forever. So they're not paying for data. They don't have to sneak around and find it. They're built into people's ecosystems already, both corporately and on the consumer side, on the professional and consumer sphere. And so Google really is becoming the dominant player. And I think for a long time, people thought, oh, it's going to be OpenAI. They're going to be the leader of the pack. Some of them, like Llama at this point, I feel like Zuckerberg just sail off into retirement, buddy. Shut down Meta and call it a day. You had your heyday with Facebook. You're not gonna win any games anytime soon. So you've got some of these other ones, and Grok is like all over the news now because of some of the stuff it's doing, and it's always been an absolute nightmare, because you want to talk about a Shoggoth right there. So you're just seeing some major shifts, and I think Google, we're going to see become a major dominant player, and it's a very capable model. It's integrated into things. Now, again, there's pluses and minuses to that, and I'm not like a pro Google, by any means. I think you need to be very discerning and careful how you use Google. Like they literally got rid of do no evil, or like, I think it was do no evil was one of their slogans. They like quietly erased it, and they're involved in all the defense contracts, and they're out at the White House dining and schmoozing. And so it's not like Google's this like, yay, let's hear it for Google, who's there for the people. No, they're not. Right. They're not a better, more like human-centered company. I've had people who work for Google who, once you kind of know how it works on the inside, you're like, yeesh. So yeah, they got rid of their original slogan, like do no evil. And they're like, well, what's evil really? And to some degree, I've talked about it before. I understand as you become bigger, it's harder to make some of those statements because you're like, well, we get beat up on both sides no matter what we do. So to some degree, I get it. But when you're like, guys, I know what you're doing too, and you remove do no evil because anybody who knew what you're doing would be like, what you're doing is evil, and you know it, and you're doing it because you're making money. So when I say Google is going to become the ultimate, probably one of the biggest, probably the dominant player moving forward, it's not me glazing Google saying they're the best model. Hey, everybody, like move over to Google. You should do all this type of a thing. It's just more me saying like, I'm not only familiar with how the tech works, how it's built, it's, where it's at, how broad it is in terms of what it can do, how integrated it is into the ecosystem, how profitable the company already is. Like I'm looking at all these different factors and saying which one's sustainable. And unfortunately, OpenAI, they just I know my camera froze. It happens. Hang on here. There we go. OpenAI, one of the biggest mistakes they made was they didn't think to themselves like, we got to figure out profitability and we got to figure out how we make sure we make some money going into this, because otherwise this is completely unsustainable. And so they just kind of kicked around the whole like, how do we build the product better and better? And it was like, well, you can only do that so long. You can only live off investor dollars for so long before you have to start making cuts, and you're looking for funding, and the funding rounds dry up, all this other stuff. So OpenAI, I think we are going to have a very hard fall from grace. And that's why I think it's hilarious Sam Altman is, trying to get everybody excited about the AI pen, as though if we all go back to handwritten notes, it's going to save the company. Are they going to go anywhere? I've told people this many times before. They're too big to disappear. What happens with them? I don't know if we'll see a shift in 2026 or not, but I do think we're going to see them slowly fall off the pages as the like dominant player very quickly. Now, Altman's convinced he's, going to change the world, and he did, I guess, by bringing Gen AI into the market, but I don't know that they're going to be where they were for a very long time. And while Google, I would very much say, is not necessarily a more ethical or more moral player in the space, they've at least done a better job not publicly getting eviscerated for making openly like unethical, immoral decisions with their technology. It's still there. Their business practices, even in how they train their AI, are still very much questionable. But you have not seen as many scandals with Google as you have with OpenAI, with Llama, with Grok. Anthropic, I think, is another one that is seen, at least industry-wise, as kind of more of a ethical, moral player. And I guess one of the good things that I'm seeing from this is, as Anthropic and Google start to kind of rise to the top in people's minds, it does validate the fact that when you play the long game and when you don't compromise ethics and morals at the expense of like whatever it's like, I'll sell myself out just to be on top, that may work for a period of time, but it does catch up to you. And as I watch some of the foolish decisions some of these big tech companies were making, or when they did things and then refused to take accountability for it, I was like, this is going to come back to bite you. Like, you think you're too big to get burned. This is going to come back to bite you. Like, people don't forget. And when you screw people over or you do something that is absolutely disgusting, and then you go, that wasn't us. What are you talking about? That's you, actually. That's your fault. Like, when you gaslight people, when you do that stuff, they don't forget. And so with some of these big tech companies, people remember. And I think that has played a huge role in which players, not only has their tech performed, but they've also known, like, we got to keep our nose clean here, if we want to be sustainable in the long term. So that's my prediction for 2026. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, Aaron. I think we still have a long ways to go for ethics and morals to make a rally. I wrote about it this week, though, that I am starting to see indicators that people are reaching a breaking point where the lack of accountability, and I'm not just talking tech, like I'm talking corporate leadership, I'm talking geopolitics, I'm talking tech, like all these things. People are reaching a point where they are so fed up with just bad being called good and paraded around as though it's fine. Like people are hitting a point where it's like, she's Louise, can we at least come back to some sort of ground? And to a point where I see people taking action on it. And so to me, that's encouraging. Are we there yet? No. But it's a big part of what I stand for. Anybody who's followed or, stuck with me content wise, like there's a lot of reasons behind that. But yeah, it cost me in the short term. There are lots of deals I walk away from because I'm asked to do things that I go, I'm not gonna participate in that. Which as a dad to 8 is not always an easy decision to make. But it's not worth it in the long run. It's just not worth it in the long run. Whatever short-term gain you think you're getting, you're burning yourself in the end. So we'll see. I agree with you. I don't think, I think we've got a lot of work to do still. I think it's going to probably get a little bit worse. Hopefully not a lot worse. I honestly, sometimes every night I'm like, can this get worse? Like, oh my goodness. So hopefully it doesn't have to get too much worse before it starts to get better. But I'm at least encouraged that people seem to be hitting their breaking point. Okay. So my final big prediction for 2026, gosh, I'm not even used to the fact it's 2026 yet, is I think we are actually going to start to see, I think we're moving into what I would call like the iPhone stage of AI right now, where, we release a new iPhone every year, but is it like so much different that rushing out and buying it's going to be a radically different digital experience? No. And I think in some ways we are going to start to see that with AI models. The exponential curve, which many people have been kind of watching this and waiting to see. Is this going to be a flattening curve? Is this going to be an exponential curve? Now I go head to head with some of the big AI folks on this because they're like, no, we've only seen the beginning. Like AGI is right around the corner, and then you're like, define it. Well, yeah. So you can't even define it with objective terms. Shut up about AGI and ASI. It doesn't mean anything. It's AI rhetoric that gets thrown around that, just is designed to scare people, all over the place. So I think we are going to start to see a bit of a flattening out of the AI development, largely because we're in this like efficiency stage. It's just like we're cleaning up the bumps and bruises, and every time we do, we create new messes, and so then we go try and clean it up. I think we're going to see more in terms of video capability. I think, we will see continued progress in what we have. But when I talk to a lot of the developers and the folks that are working in these big AI companies, they're talking about the fact like a lot of the effort right now is trying to figure out, how we get AI to do things differently. Instead of just iterating on the same AI algorithms and the same approach to generative, the GPT models. And there is some shifts that are happening, but they're really trying to go like the big thing you're probably going to hear more of in 2026 is continual learning. Now, I've got some very strong opinions on this, and we're way too late in the stream for me to dig into these. But the big goal with it is how do we actually change the base model with what it's learning in real time? So just as a quick, for those of you who may not know, you have like the AI base model, which is trained on hence the P in GPT. It's pre-trained, goes through training cycles, it gets all this stuff. That's when the mask gets put on, where you have a bunch of human testers that look through this stuff. And then what you have is like, yes, it's maybe paying attention to your conversations and referencing that in its context windows, but it's not changing the fundamental base model. A big push in 2026 moving forward is how do we actually get the base model to be changing in real time? Now, why they're pursuing that, for the life of me, I don't know. Like, we are losing control of the Shoggoth, and we're like, yeah, but how do we make it adapt on its own in real time without us having to like test it before it's in the wild. Like, I don't even know why. But then again, we also said, I don't remember what the big law of AI was, but it was never connected to the internet. That lasted about, 30 seconds. So why are we going to continual learning? It's almost like because we're hitting this ceiling and people were like, we got to do something radical. I know, free the Shoggoth. It'll be great. And so I don't, might we see a dramatic shift? If we do, if we see a dramatic shift in AI, in my opinion, it's largely going to be driven by desperation. I really think if we see something dramatic hit in 2026, it's going to be because they're getting desperate. They're taking heat. They've got to, people are figuring out how the magic trick works. And they're like, you keep showing us you're sawing a person in half. Like, we know there's two people. Like, stop doing the same trick. And I think the risk of it is that as we push for more, and I think this is a really, really important point that we as consumers need to freaking wake up and pay attention to, is when we keep screaming at the AI companies, do better, come up with your next big thing, like all this. When we put that kind of pressure on them, we are adding pressure for them to do stupid, reckless stuff that is going to cause tremendous harm on society, and have them go, we're just going to do it and figure it out later. And I'm not saying like, so what do we do? I don't have the answer for what we do with it, but it is something that we need to be really mindful of and be really careful of. Because if we keep pulling back from AI while demanding it do more from us, we are actually painting them into a corner where they're going to do something stupid. And we already know, we have already demonstrated that when people get painted into that corner, they don't make good decisions. They make really stupid ones. And we're seeing it left and right all over the news feeds right now, where it's like people get backed into a corner. It's like, we've caught you lying. We know, we have the real data. We've seen the video. We've seen the stuff. Tell us the truth. And then it's like, got to make up a new lie. And I think if we're not careful, we're going to see a lot of that in 2026 as the big tech companies feel more and more pressure. And so I think more than ever, this is where we got to be really paying attention. We got to be really assertive. We got to be very mindful of some of this stuff, because otherwise we're the ones that suffer. Like, that's the thing. These big AI companies, I mean, maybe the big AI companies take a hit, but the ones at the top, they don't face accountability for this stuff. They get a golden parachute, and then they go start another AI company. Like, that's what happens with these folks. They like destroy humanity, and then they like go innovate and create a new company and make billions of dollars off of our back. So we have to, I hate it. I wish it wasn't that way, but that is the reality of the world we live in. And so we need to take more personal responsibility. And I talk about it a lot. People get really mad about it because they're like, that's not fair. I'm like, I know it's not fair, and it sucks. And I wish it wasn't the case. And I wish we had leaders that actually operated with an ethical and moral compass. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury in many cases. And so the responsibility falls on us. And if we just go, well, it shouldn't be that way, then we get exploited. So that's just kind of some things. Now, a couple things, and then I'm going to close it up. A couple random things that I added. I wouldn't put them in my top 5 predictions for 2026. I talked a little bit about robotics. I do think we are going to start to see some real advancements here, but I don't think, like, the promise that we heard in 2025 of like, everybody's going to have a, whatever that stupid robot is that is actually controlled by a person in a VR headset. Like, we're all going to have this doing our dishes in 2026. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not going to. So is there still going to be some massive innovation? I think the big shift we're seeing in AI and robotics is we are starting to lose our obsession with creating humanoid robotics. And there's still definitely a market for that. And the razzle-dazzle of it is still capturing a lot of people's attention. But more and more robotics companies who actually have to deal with the complexities of robots. If you look at the Boston Scientific robot, it doesn't move like a humanoid. And they're like, well, yeah, because humans, when you put it into a machine, doesn't work very well. Like, it's stupid. Like a bipedal thing that only can move its arms and legs in one direction. Like that's not the most efficient use. And I have a lot of robotics friends who, I'll respond to that one, but like they get really mad when people insist on robotics needing to look like a human. And you're like, that's stupid, right? We have humans that can look and act like humans. We don't need robots that do it too. In fact, it's a very inefficient, ineffective design when we try and make them that way. And so I do think the robotics companies are starting to go, we're putting a whole lot of innovation and dollars into trying to copy humans. It really doesn't make sense. Like if we want to strap a machine gun onto something and send it charging into enemy territory, kind of makes sense to put it on a dog, a quadruped that's lower to the ground, type of a thing. Like that makes more sense than a robot that can trip over a log and then can't pick itself back up, type of a thing. And I know I'm using the defense example specifically because I'm just like, what are we doing? But like that's where you're seeing, even if you look at defense, you're seeing way more money go into like drone technology and things like that than you are like, how do we build the Terminator? Well, all it took was a few engineers to go, yeah, that's a really bad idea, because just from an engineering standpoint, it doesn't make sense. And companies are starting to go, oh, okay. So I think we're going to see more in the advanced robotics. But and I'd have to go to LinkedIn to see which user said that. But yeah, the no Jetsons made. Rosie the robot. If you were banking on 2026 being the year you weren't going to have to iron your clothes or throw it in the laundry anymore, I hate to break it to you. Unless you're happy with spending 32 hours washing a load of laundry because it takes it takes 28 hours for the robot to load the thing because it can only do one piece at a time and it drops it 37 times. You got to follow it around and pick it up afterwards. But again, we did make, to be fair, we've made some huge strides in AI and robotics in 2025, like mind blowing. And so while it is comical to watch, the CEO of Salesforce go get us a Coke and then stand there awkwardly with Elon Musk for 30 minutes while they're like, so is he like going to do it, or like what's going on here? They have made some very significant strides. The other kind of random one that I added is I really do think, going back to my comments earlier about the AI and tech companies getting desperate to embed AI everywhere. And one of the biggest ones that I think going, with the invisible AI, when people ask me about the wearables, I'm like, you do know why AI companies want that, right? Like they want you wearing their glasses so that they can suck in all of the data of your environment 24/7. Like that's what they want. They want you walking around with two cameras plastered to your face with microphones on so that they literally can see what you're looking at, see what you're doing, hear who you're talking to, hear every conversation you're having. Like it's a data harvesting effort. And I think as AI companies become more desperate for data, because AI can't make up data, only humans can. And so they're like, we've consumed all the data in the world. Like that's why you're seeing things like Palantir and stuff like that take off, because they're like, they've got surveillance cameras everywhere and they're sucking up all this data. But how much better, and I'm not saying better like I think it's better, but to the AI companies, how much better to strap cameras on to every human being on the planet and have them walk around and feed all that data into your, servers. And so I think AI companies are going to get really desperate because they don't have this world data that they so desperately need. And so I think in 2026, we're going to see even more stupid attempts at, trying to get people to sign up and even pay for it. That's the part that just blows my mind. I'm like, you want people to pay for this? You want to steal their data, but you want them to pay you to steal. You want to talk about robber barons. Like, holy crap. Talk about robber barons. Hey, will you buy these glasses and then get a subscription service so that we can steal all your data? I don't know. What do I get in return? Well, we'll transcribe the conversations that you're having in real time. Not real time, you'll kind of lag, and you'll also be distracted everything you're doing because you're kind of like looking off to the side. How's that sound for a value prop. Pretty good. I mean, at least you get Ray-Bans, right? You had to buy them and you're paying us for them. But I mean, this is great, right? Like the value prop to me is comical at best. But I think we're going to see in pure desperation more and more of these technology companies pulling this kind of nonsense as they've got to do something and they don't know what to do. And then people do stupid things. And as it stands right now, there's not a whole lot of accountability for it. So they can pull whatever shenanigans they want, and then they'll just get a presidential pardon if they find themselves in hot water, or they'll just cut a check to, the World Liberty Foundation. And, then they don't have to worry about getting in trouble anymore, type of a thing. So I think as long as some of that stuff is happening, we're gonna see things go. Now, I actually do want to address this one. It's a great comment. So the AI glasses with factory workers. Here's one of the things though that actually is a positive, and I actually did this work years ago. So it's kind of funny that it's like now becoming like the pop trend. And I'm like, I was doing this back in the 20-teens. But these wearable glasses do actually serve a real valuable purpose, and they can be used very wisely in work environments. Now, again, it's about making sure people are aware of what they're doing and whatnot. But I was working for one of the world's largest manufacturing companies, and one of the initiatives I led was using the Microsoft HoloLens 2 to help maintenance engineers. And we had a command center with some of the most seasoned repair engineers who could no longer travel and were actually slated to retire. But we were able to keep them because they wanted to keep working. They just couldn't handle the travel and the demands of going and repairing these massive multi-million-dollar machines anymore. But they wanted to work. And so we were able to use the Microsoft HoloLens to actually let them drive from the command center newer engineers who were coming in and were just getting the ropes, and they'd get stuck. And instead of having to fly somebody out all the time, they could slap on, their HoloLens. Now, granted, I would have loved a pair of Meta glasses back then, because the HoloLens was like strapping a, laptop to your face. I mean, well, it wasn't convenient. It worked, but it was far from ideal. So I do think there is a real use case for some of these things, but it needs to be done wisely. People need to be informed on what they're doing, type of a thing. Like telling a company telling its employees you need to wear AI glasses all the time. Like that's not, I would quit that company if they asked me to do that. Using them wisely, where you're using them it can be a totally transformational thing. I mean, we were able to literally, it was one of the best initiatives I ever led when it came to using XR, extended reality technology. It was brilliant. It was a blast. We had so much fun with it. People loved it. But again, we did it the right way. And I think that's in closing, I guess, if you will, as we go into 2026, somebody mentioned it because I said it earlier. Mindfulness, and not like the fluffy, like be mindful, like actually being intentional, being discerning, being educated and knowledgeable about this stuff. That is the strategy for 2026. Don't get distracted by the razzle-dazzle and the, smoke and mirrors crap. But also don't react to it and throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that's the needle we're threading in 2026, is making sure we wake up, but then we also don't overreact and throw everything out. And I think that's the real challenge we have ahead. So it's going to be an interesting 2026. I mean, good grief, it's only the 9th, and we've had multiple years worth of drama in 9 days. So if we're on trajectory for this, I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing. I'm interested to see where my mid-year check-in comes in. So those of you who follow me for long, if you haven't followed for long, subscribe, do all those fun things. I'll do a mid-year check on these topics mid-year, and then I'll do a concluding one at the end of 2026. And it was fun doing my one for 2025. I look forward to it this year. But and if you are a professional, whether you're trying to figure out, like I coach on this stuff, I consult on this stuff, if you know somebody who'd benefit from somebody who's committed to helping people be wise and discerning, let me know. But other than that, I hope you have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend. stay safe. Don't go insane with some of the crazy things going on. And with that, I will see you on the other side.